All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Connection Loop podcast, where we talk to sales leaders, entrepreneurs, and business owners about their backgrounds and, importantly, their strategies that you can learn from and actually put them into action. Now, today we have with us Andy Paul, who's with us, and he's an expert in the B2B selling space. He's also helped thousands of sellers across the world to help them make the right choices at the right moments, which is a big difference maker. He's also the host of his own podcast, the Win Rate Podcast, The Science and Art of Great Selling, and he's the author of 3 best-selling books. Andy, welcome into the Connection Loop podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So let's dive right in. Let's talk about, one of my favorite expressions that you use is the choose to win.
Yeah.
Choose to win. And I think that really not only probably resonates in so many different ways, but I really love the fact that sales reps, their decisions, they're in these areas, they're in meetings, they're sending videos, they're making presentations. Kind of jump into that and talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, you really nailed it. It's an analogy I like to use is poker. Mm-hmm. And people don't think poker is just a game of chance, and you play it. But professional poker players, have you ever spoken to one? I knew one guy went to a pro, and every time they make a move, they're calculating the probability of whether this move increases the probability of winning the hand or not. Mm-hmm. And so they're not just randomly playing a card. And it's so you apply that to selling as you have a choice. Every time you take an action with the buyer, is it going to increase your probability of winning or not? And you in order to understand whether it's going to increase the probability of winning, you really have to understand, okay, well, what does the buyer expect from me? In this interaction we're having, what does the buyer expect from me? What do they need from me to be able to move closer to making their decision? And am I delivering that? Am I providing that? What form is it going to take? Does the customer actually agree that what I'm providing is helpful and actually going to help them? You have to be conscious of it at that level and not just say, okay, here's the process. Let's just follow the process, right? This is step 1, step 2, step 3. We always do step 2 because we just did step 1. No. And unfortunately, this is not getting better. AI is not helping in this regard because, at least in the first wave, and I know you guys have a lot of experience with it, but the first wave in general in AI usage, what are people doing? Well, let's automate shit and do more of what we were doing before. And that's not helping anybody, certainly not helping the buyers. So the goal should be at all times is, okay, we have an opportunity. It's a qualified opportunity. How do we win all of our qualified opportunities? That's really should be the goal. If I have a qualified opportunity, I should win it. And so I have to make the right choices about what I'm doing at any point in time in order to do that.
Is there any commonality that you've seen between folks that you've worked with over the years where it's like, oh yeah, that's a mistake. Either they're unaware or there's that adherence to, like you said, maybe the scripting or something that you kind of found like, yep, I've kind of seen that along all the cases.
Well, I mean, we've got a really big problem in sales, right? So win rates in general, particularly in SaaS business, but they're low, right? They're in general B2B, they're below 20%, meaning that you're winning fewer than 1 out of 5 of your most qualified opportunities. Well, that's the commonality right there, is that people are just performing at really low levels and are really not very good at this job of selling. And so you have to break it down and say, well, why is that? Why are we not very good at it? And why did really the data show that perhaps we're less proficient at it than we were 30 years ago? Right? Despite all the benefits of all the technologies out there, God, we're actually worse at this than we were. Yeah. And I think that is the problem, is that we become, everybody wants the easy button. Everybody wants the recipe. Yeah. Give me a recipe I can follow. Give me a process I can follow. Yeah, okay, but you're not helping the buyer do what they want to do. And this, I think, is the big disconnect that exists in sales, is that, and no one really talks about it, but it's, for me, when you look at the people who have really been successful at this, they get it, and whether they verbalize it this way or not, but it's most sellers think their job is to go out and sell a product or a service. The trouble, that's not what the buyers think, right? I mean, if you look at, draw a horizontal line on a page and say, okay, this represents a coin. There's two sides to a coin, right?
Yep.
So if you ask most sellers, well, if selling's on one side, what's on the other side? Well, it's buying. So buying is that. Well, sure, but that's not really our job, right? Because this is not what the buyer's trying to do. What the buyers, they're not trying to buy something. Buyers are trying to make a decision to change.
Right.
Active buying represents the decision to make a change. So that's the fundamental decision that buyers are trying to make is, should we change or not?
Right.
Okay. What do we change? Not, it's first, do we change or not?
Yep.
Well, how many sellers do you know think that your job is to help the buyer make the decision to make a change? You can probably count that on one hand.
Right. No, you're right. There's a reason they're sitting there. Right.
We have this just fundamental disconnect between what sellers think they should be doing. And as I said, this has become more pronounced over time as it became more automated, and what the buyers really need. So if you take that same horizontal line and say, okay, this represents a spectrum. Every product in the world fits on that spectrum, from the least expensive to the most expensive, from the least valuable to the most valuable. Well, when buyers set out to make a change and they're considering products, and well, let's even start with the change, right? Is the change they're making something that's a transformational change, or is it a tactical change? Right? We're gonna, change the form field on a field in an internal form. Yeah, that's very tactical. Boy, we're gonna change or buy a new ERP system for the company. That's a transformational change.
Yeah.
Well, as they go through this process of saying, okay, we want to make a change, well, they need less help from salespeople to change the field on the form. They need more help if they're making a transformational. But sellers don't look at it that way. They don't look at it as, well, the buyer needs help from me to make this change decision. They just think, I need to go push my product.
Right. I got it. This is what you need. This is what you need. This is what you need. Yeah. It's a totally kind of almost an inverse relationship. How did you did you always kind of have that take on it in sales? Is it something that you kind of learned through the journey? Was it because the whole understanding your win rate story, that's a great phrase. That's a nice, like, repeatable thing that you can really think about. So how did you come up with that when you were kind of
well, that's been with me forever. I mean, it's really the beginning. I probably my first managers and so on.
Yep.
It was just drilled into me. It's like getting a qualified opportunity is hard.
Yeah.
Right. If it were easy, we wouldn't care about win rates.
Right.
But the fact is, it's hard because it's really qualified to buy what you have to sell, not a product like yours, not a product that's similar to yours. The one that has to buy exactly what you are selling.
Yeah.
If you have one, you got to win it. And that's simple. It was drilled into me very early. It's like, oh, okay. Well, how do we do that? And then it starts falling into this, well, how do we differentiate ourselves? Because, I've been in tech sales or affiliate tech business, I'd say almost 50 years. Yeah. And it's always been the same. I mean, I started off selling sort of mainframe computer systems. Yeah, there was IBM had 70% of the market, and then the rest of us, we all looked alike to the customers, right? Okay. So from day one in my careers, you come and talk to a customer, and I have a story in one of my books about this. I go in to talk to the CEO of this large home builder. I was selling into the construction industry, and it's one of those meetings where you're a young salesperson. I've been cold calling the guy for months, and always with the hope that on one hand they really wasn't there, right? Because you didn't really qualified to talk to them, right? We've all felt that.
Yeah.
But one day the secretary said, "Oh yeah, he's here. He wants to talk to you." I'm like, "Oh shit."
Yeah.
But he takes me into his office. He's got this, back in the day, as they all did, they just pre PCs, they clean desk, and but I sort of launching a pitch, and he stops me and he opens a desk drawer and pulls out this stack of business cards about 2 inches high, but takes out the rubber band, spreads them out like a deck of playing cards on his desk, and said, "Hey, Mr. Paul, these are all the computer salespeople that come by my office the last year. I haven't bought from any of them. Why should I buy from you?"
Ooh, nice setup.
He wasn't saying, "Why should I buy from your company?" He was saying, "Why should I buy from you?"
Yep.
That was like this eye-opening thing. It's like, Oh, got
Mm.
it. And for me, that was liberating because up until that point, I felt like a square peg in a round, a round peg, a square peg in a round hole, whatever.
Yeah.
Selling wasn't really for me because I was really uncomfortable with sort of the real. There's more that's back in the day, the real pitchy, prototypical sales guy.
Different back then. Yeah. Yeah.
Wasn't me. Wasn't
Yeah.
me. I was more introverted, more analytical.
Mhm.
And for me, it's like opening a door. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
this is what people want. They don't want that other stuff. They want this, and they want me to help them make this decision.
Mhm.
Um, and so when you take that approach and say, look, my job is not to sell you something. My job is to help you make this decision to change. And fortunately for me, it worked out because I like to say I'm probably a lousy salesperson, but I'm a world-class helper.
That's really good. I like that. That's a good expression too. World-class helper. Well,
And
I also think that's great though, that he set you up like that too. Like being able to stop and say, you know what? This is the stack here, and it kind of made you stop and think, like, and it was like what a great dance in terms of like, he didn't just sit there and just nod his head and not say anything. And maybe he felt something where I'm going to say this to you and let's see how, you know what I mean? Like that was just interesting.
well, I think it's a great lesson for sellers because it's been my experience throughout my career that if you show up as a human being, if you show up as a curious, interested person who's there sincerely to learn about them and to understand the things that are most important to them,
Yeah.
you get all the time in the world.
Right.
And they treat you differently, and they'll teach you how to sell to them. I mean, at various points in my career, I can point to large deals, and largest deal I ever won was like $150 million. But at each of those deals, they basically taught me how to win the deal.
It's amazing.
I got mentored by customers. I mean, think about that. And that's still possible to do today. People think, oh no, buyers don't have time, customers don't have time. That's BS. They have time. They don't have time for you if you show up saying, I'm not interested, I'm just here to pitch, and how do we get a meeting, and da da. No. But if you're showing up and they think you're there to really and have the ability to help them with navigate this, making a decision to change, they will give you their time. And I said, they'll teach you how to do it.
It shows you the power of engagement, the power of, because it really just, because like you said, time can just fly by. And when you're really engaged with someone, you're like, oh, wow, it's been about 45 minutes, but you're so into what you're talking about. And that is a huge part of connection, which for me is a big part of what you talk about and the power of human-centered selling.
Right.
So right there, I mean, what a great example of human beings being right into the human being thing. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. And the need for this hasn't diminished.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think one of the myths with AI, right, is, oh, well, they don't need us.
Yep. Yep.
Let's go back to the spectrum, right? So, again, the products are either strategic to buyers on one end or they're tactical. Paper clips is a tactical product. Yeah. Again, ERP exams, again, that's a strategic product. Well, the tactical stuff, they don't need you anymore. There aren't paperclip salespeople out there anymore, right? And so what they're looking for there is, they want the channel to add as little friction, as little cost as possible. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. On their other end, they want the channel to help them make this decision to change. Mm-hmm. So they don't want the transactional sale when they have a product that's strategic or it's a transformation for them. They want a transformational sale. They want somebody to help them. Yeah. But with all the emphasis we have on, especially in the SaaS world, what is our 5-step or 6-step process? Initial meeting, discovery call, demo, proposal. It's like buyers don't give a damn about any of those things, right? Yeah. In fact, I make the case that we shouldn't be doing discovery calls. Mm-hmm. That actually discovery calls are detrimental. Mm-hmm. And people are like, well, what are you talking about? Mm-hmm. Well, let's think it's what we're trying to do is help the buyer. Mm-hmm. So when the buyer is anybody that's looking at buying something, making a change, mm-hmm. they already have a vision in their mind of sort of what the change is, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what they really are looking for is looking for you to help them define the change they want to make
Mhm.
and help them define the outcomes they can achieve by making a change.
Yeah.
The way you do this, you've got this base of experience with all your customers and so on. Hopefully you've been learning from them.
Mhm.
Say, well, sure. Yeah, I understand that's what you like to do. Have you thought about this, right? This is
Mhm.
another way you can approach this. Hadn't we talk about defining outcomes? So I don't want to discover your requirements. I want
Mhm.
to define your requirements. And
Mm.
if I can't help you define
Mhm.
the change you want to make,
Mhm.
then I have no influence over you. And in the absence of influence, I'm just like everybody else. I'm just, hey, price and features, price and features, price and features.
That's a great way to phrase it.
So
Yeah.
that's my goal is you think about it from a buyer's perspective.
Mhm. Yep. Yep.
And it's completely different than what most selling is taught. Sales is like buyers always have 3 steps to go through. What's the change you want to make?
Mhm.
How do we want to make it? Who do we want to make it with?
Mhm. Yep. Yep.
And none of these steps of discovery and demo and that's are in there in the way that sellers say, oh no, we've got to go through my process. It's like, they don't care. So for sellers, I think the challenge becomes now if we really want to transform the way B2B sales is happening, if we want to continue to stay relevant
Mhm. Yeah.
buyers in the face of AI,
Yeah.
this is the approach we have to take is to say, look, I'm not here to sell you. I'm here to help you make a change
Mhm.
and make the decisions change. And if I do that, then I'm going to be different than everybody else that's out there who's selling a product that, for all intents and purposes, is perceived to be identical to everybody else's.
What have you seen in terms of with AI and selling currently, in terms of like the good and the bad? Like what do you enjoy about it? Like, and what are some things that you're like, that's more challenging? Because obviously, we're human centric. That's what it's all about. But what have you seen where it's like, that's a really nice tool. That's a nice use of that's supportive of the human being. And the other ones you're kind of like, not so much.
Well, I mean, on the start with the end side, it's just repeating the same mistakes people do with SaaS. It's like mass personalization,
Yeah.
The oxymoron, right? Mass personalization at scale. Doesn't work, right? It's people see through it. People are suspicious of it these days. I think where it's useful to some degree, but it's really limited, is when people are saying, okay, well, I can use this to really help prep for a call with somebody.
Yep.
I think it's great. You get more information. But the problem with most salespeople is they're not really innately curious. And they're not really analyzing this information they're getting back from whatever large language model they're using. I think, okay, well, how's this help them define what it is they're really trying to do? And we get sort of one of the things you see all the time on LinkedIn with prompting these days. Prompt, come up with a point of view. Well, if you're relying on AI to come up with a point of view about the system or service you're selling, then that's a problem.
Yeah, it's kind of like, might as well just say, sell this for me.
Yeah.
Or, start the conversation for me.
Because it's not going to come up with it, right?
Yeah.
And so that is one thing. And I think people just become too reliant on it early on. And we're so early in the whole cycle about how we use AI that, again, just going by talking to sellers and seeing what people are writing about on LinkedIn, it's like, oh yeah, we're missing the ball again, right?
Yeah.
One of my big fears, I've expressed this in the past as well. Yeah, I think the SaaS sales model basically was a failure, had been a failure. There's been some companies that have succeeded, but it's not because of the sales model. And so we saw this sort of dramatic drop in sales productivity across the board in that particular segment. I don't want to look back in 10 years and say, oh shit, we made the same mistake with AI.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah.
And I fear we're sort of heading down that path. And this is why this whole idea is that people really fundamentally rethink the context of what they're using AI for and what they're really selling is, away from selling a product to helping someone make a decision to change. Not make a decision to buy your product, make a decision to change. Now, if you look at the stats, and they're all over the board, but in general, you start to see the stat that a majority of qualified B2B opportunities end up in no decision. And some data as high as 80%, right? A pipeline ends up in no decision.
Yeah.
And the thing is, most sellers and sales leaders completely misunderstand what that means.
Mhm.
They think the buyers made the decision to stick with the status quo.
Mm.
That's not what's happening at all. What the buyer has done is made the decision not to buy from you. Those are two very different things.
The coldest answer of the cold.
Yeah.
So they've made a decision not to buy from you.
Yeah. And that's what that. And so
Mhm.
the missing piece is that the buyer has never committed to making a change. And so what happens is, in the selling process,
Mhm.
what should happen is once you've helped the buyer define the change they want to make and the outcomes they want to achieve from making a change,
Mhm.
you give them a business case. Not at the end. You do it right up front. You say,
Yeah.
okay, based on what we know today,
Yep.
this is the outcomes that you want to achieve. This is, this could be the investments, it could be the whatever metric you're using for judging the value of the investment.
Mhm.
And you say, look, we're still going to learn some stuff. But if we get to the end and we're within, 5 percentage points, one way or another,
Mhm.
of this, can you commit today that you'll make the change? Not saying you're buy from me, yet you're going to make a change, the decision change.
Yeah.
If they say no, they're not a prospect for now.
Right.
Great.
Right.
I understand. But hey, we're our business, we want to talk to people who are serious about making a change. So
Yeah.
you're just not ready, that's fine. Let's stay in touch. But then you weed people out right then.
Mhm.
Alternatively, if they say, yeah, absolutely, then you've got a prospect.
Yep.
But unfortunately, the pipeline is full of, I said, up to 80% of the people are saying, yeah, we're just doing this because we're interested, but we're not really committed to making a change. So let's get back to a choice you make as a salesperson to choose to win.
Mhm.
Choose not to sell to people that aren't ready to commit to making a change.
It's a great way to put it. I would imagine light bulbs have gone off when you work with folks, when you've kind of like brought them through the lens of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a different way of thinking about.
Yeah.
But it's not only it's different, but it's thinking in general, right? And I think this again is another of the gaps we see is I've got the process. I don't really have to think because I'm going to follow the process. It's like
Right.
selling is a profession that absolutely rewards thinking.
Yes.
I believe I was very fortunate in my career working for people who are very smart, very rigorous, right? Really challenging people to work for.
Yeah.
But you benefit hugely because it was just like they were deep, they were creative, they forced you to justify everything, forced you to think about it. I had a manager I worked for at one point as VP, and it's my first enterprise sales job, and I really didn't know what I was doing, obviously, and he sort of somewhat subtly, but I got the point. He called me on a Sunday afternoon after I'd been there for a few months.
Yep.
And he said, I just want to go through some of your accounts. And so we started doing an account review on a Sunday afternoon.
Wow.
Which was, a lesson on several points. One is, I didn't have my system in front of me. But this was a long time ago. There really weren't CRM systems at that time.
Yeah.
But he was just going through it in a level of detail that for me was just so eye-opening. It's like, oh my God, these things I should know, but don't.
Yep.
The fact that he seems to know, just intuitively knows more about my accounts than I do, even though he's never really talked to them.
Yeah.
It was just these things like, oh God, I really got to ratchet up the game because the expectation level is so high that I understand the expectations. I understand the customer and really what they're trying to achieve and what this change is so important to them and what they want to achieve. And, how can I help? It's like what do they need from me next to make that next step? And I talk about in my book, Sell Without Selling Out, as a sales manager, you should be able to go through every account, take a salesperson, go through every account on their pipeline and say, okay, what does the buyer need from us right now to move forward and move closer to making a decision?
Yep.
Take one step. What do they need from us right now? What form? So it's really what help do they need from us? What form is that help going to take? And why is it going to be helpful to them?
Yep.
And a salesperson every account that's in their pipeline should know the answer to that. And if they don't, they're not up to date on that account. They really don't know the account. They're not in a position even to forecast it because they don't know what's going on.
And if you don't know, how can you forecast it?
Yeah. And so it's just this minimum level of expectation. It's like, as a seller, if it's in your pipeline, what do they need from us?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know,
you need to know. You
either get on a plane and go talk to them, or you get them on the phone, or you set up a Zoom call or whatever, but you gotta find out. Now, the fact you don't know may be indicative of the fact you haven't built that level of trust with them. They haven't built the connection, and so they're not opening the door to you.
Yeah.
But that's also, instrumental from as a manager standpoint. Say, look, maybe we've got some coaching we need to do here. Where are we falling short in the ability to connect with people and to build this first level connection that leads to trust and influence,
and to get those real answers that you need,
and to get the answers you need. Because again, another lesson I learned early on is customers have no obligation to tell you anything.
Right. Yeah, they don't.
Just like we see in cop shows where police doing interrogation and no obligation to tell you the truth.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't either.
Yeah.
And they will tell you, if you're making them feel uncomfortable and they just want you to go away, they'll tell you whatever, right?
Yeah.
You got to be able to build the relationship where they'll actually tell you what's the truth.
Yeah, and that's a lot of it, is skill, like you're talking about. Like I remember talking to one person one time, and it's the skills that you have, understanding what the goals are, what the plan is, but bringing your own human element to it, but understanding that you need that trust to get those answers that you need to be able to facilitate everything else. It's almost like you can't go forward if you don't create this environment that's important,
Yeah, and it doesn't happen in a linear sequential fashion. That sales processes are laid out to be. And
right, just A, B, C, D, and then boom. Well, there's side tours over to some different things.
Yeah, and Gartner did a good job of sort of outlining this, like back in 2018, 2019. They released this, our first buyer enablement study, and they have this famous spaghetti diagram of what a buyer decision flow chart looks like. It starts and stops and starts over. A new person comes in, the whole thing starts over again. I mean, it's sure that's the way it is. And I remember asking Brent Adamson this. He was a little defensive about it, but I said, okay, have you seen any one customer that's completely changed their selling process based on the fact that this is the way buyers make the decisions? I don't know, maybe. I don't know. It's like, no. I mean, they've all, every sales organization still is like a linear 6-step process, and it's just irrelevant to buyers. That's the hard truth.
So let me ask you this. This is our favorite question. This is the big one. You ready for this one? Forget everything else we just talked about. I'm kidding.
Sure.
Mistakes we all learn from. Right? What for you, like, you're such a great way of breaking everything down. So for you, like through the course of your career, was there a moment when you sat there like, oh man, I made a mistake on that? Like, were you self-aware of the mistake and where you're like, oh, I got to correct that or something, something within what you were doing, that really helped you get better,
Yeah. I mean, it was a mistake. I should have done better anyway. But one start was with, we were competing against the entrenched vendor at a large account. Would have been like a $4 million deal. And this was back in the late 80s. So $15 million deal today. And we just thought we had it wired. I mean, we were so far superior from a product standpoint to the competitor by the customer's own admission, right? Side by side. We're competitive from a price standpoint. Yada, yada, yada. We lost the deal. We just hadn't talked to the right people, right? We assumed we were talking to the right people, but they were the incumbent, and they were talking. It wasn't talking to the CEO, sure. Right? But it was the real actual decision makers, people that were real influencers in the account. We thought we had the right ones, and we missed a couple. And it was a very sobering day because we forecasted the board, and this is a startup, and it was a pretty decisive deal. And it was bad.
But you took the learning from that though, and
sure. Yeah. Well, the thing is, I knew it beforehand, but I just didn't do it. and because we got overconfident.
Mhm.
And so that's, I think of anything. The lesson was not, hey, make sure you're multi-threading and doing all that. Sure, you always want to do that. But we got overconfident.
Right.
And,
Don't assume it's done. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
well, never assume that people see things your way.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, you really learn to check, double check, go deeper in the relationships. And one things that sort of indirectly took from that, but I trained people. I said, think about it. Every call that you have, and every interaction you have with a buyer, doesn't matter what it is.
Yep.
You've got one of four goals. One is you're trying to deepen your connection. You're trying to deepen your understanding of the buyer. You're trying to deepen the understanding of things that are most important to the buyer.
Yeah.
And you're trying to deepen your understanding of who they're most important to. And because one of the really key things that sort of came out of that deal is, but it is, again, a lesson I'd learned earlier, but I was able to frame it maybe as a result of this deal, is that in every big opportunity you're working on, and maybe small opportunities, but I've primarily dealt with large opportunities.
Yeah.
There's always one thing that's most important to the customer than everything else. One thing. And your job as a salesperson is to find out what that one thing is and who it's most important to. And if you can discover that, you've given yourself an advantage in the deal. And give an example. Company I was with, we were selling the first system to provide broadband internet browsing to in-cabin internet to cruise ships. This was ages ago. And voice over IP and so on. So we were, this is the biggest cruise line in Asia. And we were kind of a small company. We're about $30-40 million a year company at that point, competing against multi-billion-dollar satellite system integrators. This is for satellite system. But we got down selected to the final two because we had some pretty interesting ideas about how to implement it. But then they, as they do, have big deals, is they down select the final two and they release a final RFP. And this RFP had a compliance matrix, which people have never done RFPs. That's pages upon pages of graphs saying, here's the feature. Do you comply with this feature? If not, why not? What do you do with that? Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And they had this compliance matrix that ran 300 line items. And I looked at this and I called the sales guy and I say, these aren't all equally important. So what here is most important? And who's it most important to? He said, I didn't know. I said, well, got on a plane back to Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, where the company was headquartered, and met with the CEO. And he came back and said, I found out. So the CEO, he doesn't care about 299 of these things. The only one he cares about is he wants to make sure that 24 hours a day, he can get the live take from the outboard casinos. So he knows, because that's where the money was coming from, those cruise ships. So it wasn't coming from staterooms, and so it was the casinos.
Yep.
And we said, oh, okay. So we basically ignored the other 298 things. And we focused our whole proposal around the fact that these satellite links were never going to go down. The worst weather in the world, we have backup links. We're going to, if the equipment failed, to be hot standbys that would switch in automatically. He was going to have that link up come hell or high water.
And you're not going to miss it. If James Bond walks in to play a hand, you're not going to miss it at 1 a.m.
Basically ignored 90% of the RFP. And we won the deal.
That's
because
great.
it was the one thing that was most important to the person who was most important in the organization. And every deal has that. But you're not going to find out if you don't have the connections and the relationships and the trust built to really understand the organization, to have somebody sort of tell you, well, this is really critical. And hey, it's most important to this VP over here that may not look important in the org chart, but boy, he's a huge influencer. You get him locked in on this, you're golden.
I think you have another phrase. What's the one thing? Find the one thing.
Find the one thing. And that's in my book. It's there. And I've learned it since the beginning of my career is there's always one thing. And yeah, you find out. And sometimes, again, it's not obvious when you say who it's most important to. I mean, I had one account with a client that I was helping them with. It was their biggest account. There was about a $500,000 a month account for them. And the key influencer on the deal was the CEO's executive assistant.
Yep. Yeah.
And
there it is.
no one understood that when they started working on it.
Wow.
And they were an incumbent. My client was the incumbent at this account, but they were being challenged by some new vendors. The new vendors just said, "Oh no, we got to focus on the VP of procurement." And I said, "No, who have you been working with all along? Who's the one's giving you your orders?" Well, it's Carol. Right? Carol's the one we focus on, and that's how we won the deal again.
Great. It's great. It's smart. It's totally smart. When you're working with, you're right there. She's the contact. Yeah, it's exactly right. And has the ear of everything else. That's
has the ear and actually has the influence. And that's
right.
That's, you've been in sales a long time. It's like everybody says, "Oh, sell high, sell high, sell high." It's like, I learned early on from one of my bosses, like, no. Sell to the people that really are going to be using the product, that have the influence over the use of it, and may have the influence over the budget. They may make the highest person. You can oversell an account. And for example, whereas one company I was managing this division, and we're developing a new product, and this chip vendor, we told him, we're going to design your product into our product. He says, "Oh no, I've got to meet with your CEO." I said, "No, you don't. We've already decided you're going to be designed in." He said, "No, my boss says, this is our sales process. We've got to meet with the CEO."
Sure. The process. Yep.
And I said, "Okay, I'll set it up." Well, the CEO in this company was the smartest engineer in the world, practically, best engineer in the company. And his first comment was, "Why am I in this meeting?" And I said, "Well, because he said he had to meet with you."
Just do this. Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
And the guy goes into his pitch, and the CEO says, "I didn't need to be in this meeting, but now that you've told me all this, I have an opinion." And it wasn't their product. They couldn't do what he thought we should do. He got lost the deal because he insisted on talking to the CEO. And this is not the only time it's happened. Wow. I've had this happen with another 2 clients where they said, CEO's like, "I don't need to make a decision, but if you're asking me for my opinion, I've got one."
Right.
So when you're selling, it's like, just think about it for a second. Does the CEO really need to be involved? Or is the people that are actually, as I said, the influencers, the implementers, the users, that's who you want to focus on.
Right.
And make sure you're dead solid with them.
Yeah. That's great. Wow. And I gotta tell you, this has been one of the best episodes in terms of sheer detail and strategy, because you mentioned, just diving into really great things that people really need to realize in terms of, does someone want to make the change? Get them to make the change. Find the right person. Focus on the right things. Be a critical thinker. Dive. You know what I mean? These are all wonderful gold nuggets that you've laid out there today.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. This has been amazing. Any last words before we go? Anything kind of a hey, on the horizon for the rest of the year? What do you got?
No. I mean, I think it's just be critical consumers of technology, right? I mean, that's be critical thinkers about it. I mean, it's incredible newish now. It's been several years, but it's continually being reinvented with AI and how you're using it. Don't get sucked into just step by step. This is how we do it. This is the prompts we use. No, every customer is different. Every situation is different. They may look like the other customers, but they're not. Yep. And when you think about prepping for meetings, it's not about their requirements necessarily. You want to get that information, but the thing you're really trying to find is what's the vision of the change they want to make. They have a vision.
Yeah, right. They do.
And how can you help shape that vision?
Right.
Because this is sort of the last thing. It's just, as you're working on a deal, think about this: is make a little table. It's got 2 columns, and the first column is labeled then, and the second column is now. And so the first row in that column is, under then, what was the customer's perception of the change they want to make, or definition of the change they want to make when we first talked to them? Column 2, what's their definition of the change they want to make now?
Yep.
And if there's no gap between those two, you're in a commodity sale. It's going to be price and features.
Yep.
You haven't been able to influence, so you have to actually write it down though, because you can see, oh yeah, there's a gap. So in the second line, what was their definition of the outcomes they want to achieve by making a change when you first talked to them? Yep. Second column, what is their definition of the outcomes they want to achieve now?
Yep. And
if there's a gap there, that's the measure of your influence. If there's no gap, you have no influence. It's going to be price and features. So this is just something really simple for sellers to think about: is, have I really had an influence? Because increasingly you read on LinkedIn and you talk to clients, and then buyers say, oh, I know exactly what I want. We've got to figure out, we've done our own prompting with AI. We've got it all figured out. We know exactly what we want. I would say they're not a prospect for you. If they're not open to your suggestion or your influence.
Right. Yep. They've made up their mind. It's like, okay, yeah.
If they think they know exactly what they want, then fine. Again, early boss that when we ran across somebody like that, he said, fine, just send them a quote. But spend your time on the other people.
Right. Just get that. Here you go. Here it is. On to the next one. Yep. There we go.
And what we found is occasionally people would say, well, thanks for the quote, but this is way too expensive. We said, well, why do you think that? Right. And then we could get into a conversation.
Right.
Yep, use it qualifying. And it's like, no, that's kind of an interesting tactic to use. Somebody thinks they really know what they want. Fine. Here's a quote.
Yeah, if they're starting to critically think, like, wait, why is it like that? Then you open up the conversation. Well, now we're engaging. So that's a huge thing. Yep, it's perfect. Andy, thank you so much, man. This was fantastic. Thank you for taking the time. I know you're busy with 101 things, but I think the audience will really, really appreciate it. So thanks.
Great.
So much.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's been fun.
Yeah, loved it. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Everybody, we'll see you next episode.